Speaking of profit, ill-gotten gains, and more, this is also a tremendously important story. So let's put this up there from Public Citizen, which is that the Federal Reserve Vice Chair traded up to $5 million out of bonds and into stocks one day before Chairman Jerome Powell signaled a major policy action. Now, you can say a lot of things about this. You could say that he had an inkling, there's no direct evidence that he was even knowledgeable of the situation, but at the very least, Krystal, the appearance of corruption, as we always say, is just as pernicious as real corruption itself.
Yep.
These people should not be actively trading stocks and bonds. We already had the Dallas Federal Reserve guy who had to resign because he was making up to $1 million trades on information. Many information necessarily that he could have profited from and knew he was going to profit from whenever he made decisions. This is, again, the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve, up to $5 million in bonds and stocks. And what also always galls me about these things is that they are so brazen in their actions that they disclose it. All of this has actually come from public disclosure forms, from their active portfolios of buying and selling. Now, look, I'm not going to say wealthy people or whatever can't serve on the Federal Reserve. Of course not. Fine, whatever. But I think that at the very least, if you are going to have a hand in steering monetary policy, you should not be actively trading stocks and bonds, whatever. Something in a blind trust, even then, it's a little sketchy. As we've seen blind trusts get, we have seen blind trusts be revoked or worked around many times in American history, especially amongst presidents and elected officials. But at the very least, they don't even try to hide what they've been doing there. Up to $5 million on potentially non-public information when you have a direct hand in shaping the market to the tune of hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around, especially post-2008, just how powerful the Fed is.
Yeah.
And how much it controls our economy. I mean, look, central banks at the most basic level, most simplistic level, they decide who gets money and how much money. And especially after the financial crash, the Fed has been extraordinarily aggressive, extraordinarily involved, extraordinarily important. There actually is not enough focus on what the Fed is doing or understanding of what the Fed is doing. Policy is also obviously extremely important and all of that. But on a day-to-day basis, the dudes on Wall Street, the CEOs in this country, they are watching every single word and every single tiny move that the Fed makes because it's extraordinarily powerful. So they're supposed to be held, everyone involved is supposed to be held to extraordinarily high standards to avoid even the potential appearance of corruption. So when you're talking about moving money around the day before a gigantic announcement is made, I mean, this is insane. And as you point out, this comes on the heels of revelations about two different regional Fed presidents in Boston and in Dallas. Now, the Boston guy says he resigned because of health reasons, but it was right after
the Wall Street Journal investigation.
It came out that, he was doing a lot of things with regards to real estate, which is another market that they can have a lot of influence over. So Wall Street Journal revealed this, and next thing you know, he resigns. Again, he says it was health problems, but clearly there's a problem here. Clearly there's a big problem here. And whether it's actual corruption or whether it's just an appearance of corruption, it really doesn't ultimately matter. Apparently, Powell's announced is they're going to do an investigation and they're going to look into this and what else they can do to make sure that you don't have these problems again. But this is a dramatic and incredibly significant failure that will get very, very little attention, but again shows you the way that these elites just think that they can do whatever they want, play by a different set of rules. They, are quick to condemn different segments of elite society, quick to condemn, people who aren't believing them or buying into whatever it is that they're trying to sell. But then you have instances like this where you go, well, how is it that every single institution is completely corrupted in this regard? We talked about the judicial system and all these judges.
Yep.
that had financial interests in the cases that they were ruling on. Of course, Stephen Donziger is a great case in point there. Obviously, we know the way that members of Congress are buying and selling stocks. And again, the Fed is supposed to be held to, not that members of Congress are held to a very high standard, but the Fed is supposed to be held to an even higher standard than that. So this is just an absolutely dramatic failure. There's no other way to put it.
There's no other way. It reminds, people have such little faith in our institutions. I saw a Wall Street Journal story about some TikTok kids who all they do is follow the trades of Nancy Pelosi and of other high-profile members of Congress, and they're beating the market. They're like a hedge fund. They're literally like making personal trades on the exact same, following the Stock Disclosure Act that many of these members of Congress are doing, and apparently they're actually doing pretty well. What does that tell you? They have zero faith whatsoever that any of this is happenstance. They say, hey, these people look like they're making a lot of money. I might as well jump in on the train. When you have that level of corruption, it is not that far away from a kleptocracy, where you just have people openly, we're not that far away from people openly just making a trade on something. And especially when you have the culture war to the ability to come to your side or not, or the media, how many people reported on Nancy Pelosi's stock options trades of up to $1 million on like Microsoft and semiconductor companies? Yeah, it was her husband. Oh, okay. I guess that makes it, I guess she doesn't profit whatsoever from her husband.
Or how about yesterday we covered this incredible CNN segment where Faz Shakir suggests very gently that maybe Heidi Heitkamp, who's been being paid to advocate for low taxes for the rich, that maybe she has a financial interest at stake here as well. And the CNN anchor jumps in to rescue.
They'll protect you.
Yeah, first I loved how she was like, let's not get into inside baseball. Inside baseball? What are you talking about? This is like
financial journalist.
If you're not talking about the money in Washington, you are not talking about what's actually going on in Washington. And then she rushes in to defend the good reputation of Heidi Heitkamp. Let's be clear, she lost her seat for taking a vote of conscience. I mean, that's part of what the major problem is here, is people feel like they're not getting the real story. They feel like they're not seeing what's really driving the decision making here, because they're not. Because the whole system is architected that you can't even suggest that. You can't ask these uncomfortable questions. Oh, it's inside baseball. We're not going to talk about the way that Nancy Pelosi is profiting off her position. We're not going to talk about the way that these Fed dudes are profiting off of their potential inside knowledge. We can't talk about any of the moneyed interests who have a lot at stake in what happens with this reconciliation bill. That would just be too unseemly. And so people know that they're not getting the real story of what's actually going on and what's driving this decision making.
Well, because they're not. I mean, and this happens every time. A Republican senator does it. Fox either stays silent or doesn't cover it. Pelosi does it. Fox and Friends, top thing. Everybody cares about Richard Burr. Everybody ignores Nancy Pelosi. I mean, I did that whole thing, Unusual Whales, the guy from Twitter. Writes up always how the Senate's doing and stock. They're beating the market by 10, 20%. I mean, look, there are hedge funds on Wall Street that charge people, 2 and 20 in order to do the exact same thing. And they're not getting the same returns. So you tell me what's going on here. Are they the biggest geniuses? You see how they speak. I've met a lot of them. Let me tell you, there ain't a lot up there. Okay?
Not sending their best.
Yeah, they're not sending their best whenever it comes to Congress. Same thing here. I mean, you're really going to tell me that they just the guy claims he was rebalancing his portfolio. Last time he did it in April. This time he does it on February 27th. Just happens to be the day before the chairman makes a major announcement, which has massive impact on U.S. policy. I mean, look, guys got to rebalance, right? It just had to be on that day. And they have plausible deniability, but the rest of us know what's going on. We know what's going on here. Elizabeth Warren and some others have called for an SEC investigation.
Yes.
At the very least, we could have something like that. Look, if it truly was just a rebalance and they've got emails and stuff to prove it, okay, fine. Remarkable coincidence, but the public deserves to know. We deserve to know.
Public deserves to know, and the public deserves for this to never happen again. They should not be buying and selling stocks. They should not be actively trading in the market. In my opinion, they shouldn't be even owning stocks while they are in these positions of incredible power. We throw around the words public servants. Public service is supposed to come with some kind of sacrifice. This is the very least that they could do in order to give the public some confidence that their decision making is actually about the public good and not about what they're going to personally profit on. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.